I still can't sleep with the lights off. It's been 3 months since that night, and I've moved twice, changed my phone number, even legally changed my middle name. Anything to break whatever connection was formed. The others think I'm paranoid, that I've let fear consume me. That is, the ones who are still able to think anything at all. I know what's out there now. I know what watches from dark corners and empty rooms. I know what waits just beyond the threshold we foolishly opened. And I know it's still coming for us. My name is Michael, and until 94 days ago, I was a normal college sophomore with normal worries, grades, student loans, and whether Allison from my literature class would say yes if I asked her out. Now I worry about whether the scratch I hear at night is coming from inside or outside my apartment. I worry about the shadows that move when they shouldn't. I worry about the whispers I hear in languages that have never been spoken by human tongues. It started, like most terrible ideas these days, with TikTok. Devin, my roommate, had been doom-scrolling one night when he came across a video that claimed to contain instructions for a ritual that could temporarily open the veil between worlds. "Check this out," he said, turning his phone so I could see. The video showed a group of teens sitting in a circle with candles, a hastily drawn symbol on what looked like butcher paper, and various items placed at specific points around the design. "Just another fake ritual for views," I said dismissively. "Maybe," Devin grinned. "But this one's getting crazy engagement because people are saying it actually works. The comments are wild." I glanced at his phone again, watching as the teens in the video chanted something in unison. The video cut abruptly as the candles supposedly flickered out simultaneously. "Edited," I said. "Obviously," Devin agreed. "But what if we tried it? Halloween's coming up. We could film ourselves doing it. Maybe get our own viral video." That's how, 3 days later, our apartment became the staging ground for what we jokingly called Operation Demon Door. Devin had invited 2 more friends, Zach and Rachel, while I'd invited Allison, who had surprisingly agreed to come, and my childhood friend Eric. "I printed out the full instructions," Devin announced proudly as we gathered in our living room that Friday night. He held up several pages of paper. "This is the extended version from a Reddit thread. Apparently, the TikTok version leaves out important safety steps." Rachel rolled her eyes. "Safety steps for a fake ritual? Seriously?" "Hey, we're doing this properly," Devin insisted. "Even fake rituals have rules." We spent the next hour transforming our living room according to the instructions. We pushed the furniture against the walls, creating a large open space in the center. Devin had purchased black candles. They had to be black, he emphasized, and arranged them in a specific pattern. Eric helped him draw an intricate symbol on a large sheet of craft paper using red paint that looked uncomfortably like blood. "What's that symbol supposed to be?" Allison asked, looking uneasy for the first time since arriving. "It's called a doorway sigil," Devin explained, consulting his printout. "It's supposedly based on some ancient Sumerian gateway symbols mixed with elements from 17th century grimoires." "Where'd you find this ritual again?" I asked, suddenly feeling a nagging sense of discomfort. Devin shrugged. "It was on TikTok, but the detailed instructions came from some obscure forum. The thread had been archived, but someone linked a PDF." Zach, who had been quiet while setting up his camera equipment to document our stunt, spoke up. "These instructions are detailed." He was looking over Devin's shoulder at the printout. "Most fake internet rituals are vague, but this has specific timing, phrases in some language I don't recognize, and very explicit warnings." "That just makes it more fun," Devin said, but his voice held a note of uncertainty that wasn't there before. By midnight, everything was ready. The 6 of us sat in a circle around the painted sigil, each positioned at one of the 6 points of the strange, angular symbol. The black candles cast shifting shadows across our faces, creating an admittedly eerie atmosphere. Zach had set up his camera on a tripod to capture everything. "Everyone ready?" Devin asked, his voice hushed despite his earlier bravado. We all nodded, some more enthusiastically than others. I caught Allison's eye across the circle. She gave me a small smile that seemed to say, "This is silly, but I'm having fun. I smiled back, feeling a little better. Okay, Devin continued. We each need to place our offering at our position on the sigil. The offerings were random personal items that the instructions required, something that held meaning or had been in our possession for at least a year. I'd chosen an old watch my grandfather had given me. Allison placed down a small diary. Rachel contributed a childhood stuffed animal, while Eric used a pocket knife he'd carried since we were kids. Zach placed a withered baseball cap, and Devin used a small bronze sculpture his father had brought him from a business trip years ago. Now we recite the invitation, Devin said, holding up a paper with strange, angular writing. We need to say it 3 times in unison. He passed around copies of the chant, the symbols looking less like letters and more like jagged tears in the paper itself. The longer I stared at them, the more my eyes seemed to resist focusing on them properly. How are we supposed to pronounce these? Eric asked, squinting at his paper. Just do your best, Devin said. The instructions say the intent matters more than perfect pronunciation. We began to recite the bizarre syllables, our voices creating a discordant chorus that seemed to hang unnaturally in the air of our apartment. By the 3rd repetition, I felt a strange pressure building in my ears, like the altitude change on an airplane. The candles flickered violently halfway through our final recitation, casting wild, elongated shadows across the walls. I tried to convince myself it was just a draft, but all the windows were closed, and we turned off the air conditioning to avoid any unexpected breezes. As we finished the chant, the room fell into perfect silence, not the normal quiet of a pause in conversation, but an absolute absence of sound, as if the air itself had become solid. The pressure in my ears intensified. Then every candle went out simultaneously. In the sudden darkness, someone gasped. I think it was Rachel. I felt a cold draft sweep across the floor, causing goosebumps to rise on my arms. Did you guys feel that? Allison whispered. Before anyone could answer, the candles reignited themselves, all at once, the flames burning taller and with an unnatural steadiness. At the center of our circle, directly above the sigil, the air seemed to ripple. There's no better word for it. It was like looking through water, reality itself becoming fluid and distorted in a roughly door-shaped vertical space. Holy shit, Zach breathed, his eyes wide as he stared at the phenomenon. Please tell me the camera is catching this. The rippling intensified, the air beginning to darken within the distortion, like ink spreading through water. And within that darkness, something moved. Devin, Rachel said sharply, fear evident in her voice. What exactly does this ritual do? What did you say about opening a veil? Devin's face had gone pale. His earlier excitement completely evaporated. It's supposed to create a temporary doorway that allows us to see into another plane of existence. Just see, right? Eric asked, his eyes fixed on the darkening distortion. Not like allow anything through. Devin swallowed hard. The instructions were very clear about closing the door properly after the viewing. The darkness in the center of our circle had deepened to an impossible black, a void that seemed to swallow the light from the candles. And within that void, I could now clearly see movement, a suggestion of limbs, too many and too long, shifting and rearranging themselves. We need to close it, I said urgently. Devin, how do we close it? Devin scrambled for his printout, hands shaking as he flipped through the pages. There's a closing chant, and we need to know. What? Several of us asked in unison. The offerings, Devin said, his voice barely audible. We're supposed to remove them from the sigil before the door fully manifests. If we don't, they create a tether. As if on cue, our personal items began to slide slowly across the floor, moving of their own accord toward the center of the sigil. My grandfather's watch dragged across the painted lines, leaving a thin scratch in the floorboards. Grab them. I shouted, lunging for my watch. The moment my fingers touched the cool metal, an electric shock ran up my arm, causing me to cry out and recoil. The others had similar experiences as they tried to retrieve their items. The darkness at the center of the circle had now taken on a vaguely rectangular shape, unmistakably door-like, and it was opening wider, the blackness expanding outward. The temperature in the room plummeted, our breath becoming visible in the suddenly frigid air. The closing chant. Allison cried, "We need to do it now." Devin thrust papers into our hands, his face contorted with fear. We began reciting the closing incantation, our voices shaking and out of sync. The darkness pulsed, seeming to resist our efforts. As we continued chanting, I noticed something emerging from the void. Not physical form, but something like tendrils of shadow, darker than the darkness surrounding them. They reached out toward our personal items, curling around them possessively. One such tendril brushed against my hand as I desperately tried to pull my watch away, and I felt a sensation I'll never be able to properly describe, like having my soul lightly scraped by something ancient and hungry. Our voices grew stronger, more unified in our fear, and the darkness began to contract. The shadow tendrils withdrew rapidly back into the void, but not before wrapping tightly around our offerings. As the door-like rift finally closed with what felt like a soundless thunderclap, our personal items vanished with it. The candles extinguished once more, plunging us into darkness. When Zach finally fumbled for the light switch, we found ourselves sitting in a circle around an empty sigil. No trace of our offerings remained. We sat in stunned silence for several long moments, processing what had just happened. "It was just a power outage in a draft," Eric finally said, his voice strained with forced rationality. "The items, they're probably under the couch or something." But a thorough search of the apartment yielded nothing. Our offerings were gone, as if they had never existed. The next morning, we collectively tried to convince ourselves it had all been an elaborate prank orchestrated by Devin, that he had somehow created the effects we'd witnessed and hidden our personal items. Devin vehemently denied this, looking as shaken as the rest of us. We might have eventually convinced ourselves that there was some rational explanation, if not for what began happening 3 days later. Rachel was the first. She called me in hysterics, claiming she kept seeing her childhood stuffed animal, the one used as her offering, in impossible places. "It was in my bathroom mirror, Michael," she sobbed over the phone. "Not the reflection of it, just the bear itself, like it was standing in some dark room on the other side of the glass. It looked wrong. Its eyes were different." 2 days later, she stopped answering calls or texts altogether. When we went to her apartment, her roommate said she'd left in the middle of the night without explanation. Her phone was found on her bed, the screen displaying a text she'd been in the process of sending to me. I can hear it calling for Miaf. Eric was next. He began experiencing vivid nightmares in which he was being stalked through endless dark corridors by something that used his pocket knife to scratch messages on the walls. The final night I spoke with him, he called at 3 a.m., whispering frantically. "It's in my apartment, Michael," he said, his voice trembling. "It's using my knife to scratch at my bedroom door. I can see the blade coming through the wood." The police report stated that Eric's door had indeed been extensively damaged from the inside, with what appeared to be knife marks covering nearly every inch of the wood. Eric himself was nowhere to be found. Zach's camera, which had captured our ritual, revealed nothing unusual when we reviewed the footage. Just 6 friends sitting in a circle, candles going out due to an apparent draft, and our confused reactions to something the camera couldn't see. But Zach became obsessed with reviewing the footage, claiming that if he listened with headphones and increased the volume, he could hear whispers between our words. The last time I saw him, he showed me his latest discovery, a frame-by-frame breakdown of the moment the candles went out the first time. "Look," he said, pointing to a smudge on the screen. "If you enhance it and adjust the contrast." The resulting image was disturbingly clear. A tall, emaciated figure standing behind our circle, its limbs too long and jointed in too many places, its face a blank void except for what looked like a vertical slit, like a door, slightly ajar. Zach disappeared the next day, leaving behind his laptop open to hundreds of enhanced images from the footage, each showing the figure in a different position, gradually moving closer to our circle with each frame. Devin began suffering from what he called waking dreams, in in which he would suddenly find himself standing in a dark, cold place that looked like our apartment, but wrong somehow. The proportions distorted, the corners too sharp. "It's like I'm on the other side," he told me. Dark circles under his eyes from lack of sleep. "I can see our world through little cracks, but I can't get back through." These episodes increased in frequency and duration until, during our last conversation, he stopped mid-sentence, his eyes focusing on something over my shoulder. "The door," he whispered. "It never closed properly. It's still open, just a crack." His eyes met mine, filled with terror, and they're widening it from their side. I turned to look behind me and saw nothing. When I turned back, Devin was gone, simply gone, as if he'd never been sitting across from me at our kitchen table. Allison lasted longer than the others. We clung to each other, desperately trying to find a way to close the door properly. We researched obsessively, consulted occult specialists, most of whom were obvious frauds, and even attempted our own countermeasures. Salt lines around our beds, protective symbols from various traditions drawn on our skin. Our offerings created a connection. Allison theorized one night as we huddled in my new apartment, having abandoned the original one where the ritual took place. They're using those items like anchors, pulling themselves through bit by bit. 2 weeks ago, she stopped answering my calls. I went to her dorm room and found her roommate in hysterics. According to her, Allison had been standing in front of their bathroom mirror, talking to her reflection as if it were someone else. Then she pressed her hand against the glass, which appeared to give way under her touch. The roommate swears she saw Allison pulled into the mirror by something on the other side. That leaves only me. I've gotten rid of all mirrors in my home. I avoid reflective surfaces of any kind. I sleep with the lights on and the TV playing loudly to drown out the scratching sounds that come from inside my walls at night. Sometimes I feel the watch, my grandfather's watch that was taken, ticking on my wrist, even though there's nothing there. The phantom sensation is always accompanied by a drop in temperature and that terrible feeling of being scraped from the inside. Last night, I woke to find my bedroom door open, though I distinctly remember closing and locking it before going to bed. Standing in the doorway was a perfect silhouette of myself, a three-dimensional shadow that moved when I moved, like a dark reflection without a mirror. It held out its hand, and in its palm was my grandfather's watch. I'm writing this as a warning. Don't play with rituals you find online, no matter how fake they seem. Don't open doors if you don't know how to close them properly. And if you ever come across a ritual involving a doorway sigil and personal offerings, run the other way. Because some doors, once opened even a crack, can never be fully closed again. And there are things on the other side that have been waiting a very long time for an invitation to cross the threshold. I hear footsteps in the hallway outside my apartment now. They sound exactly like mine, but slightly out of sync, as if echoing from somewhere much farther away than the hallway should extend. There's a knock at my door. I know it's my shadow self, and I know what it wants. It wants to give me back my watch. It wants me to accept my offering and complete the exchange. It wants me to hold the door open from this side. I don't think I'm strong enough to refuse anymore. Dear listener, thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. Make sure to subscribe to my channel. Many more terrifying, mysterious, and thrilling stories are coming soon. See you again very soon.